I'm Cape Floss Live. I'm driving. Not supposed to be making a video really, but I'm just gonna, I'm so worried, so upset, and I'm so stressed about Kris Faafoi's law that's been rushed through in Parliament. We want everybody to be watching if you can. Wait to see if somebody comes on. If anybody comes on, you can say hi. I'm going to make this quick video. I'm going to be making several urgent videos. SOS Australia, SOS England. That's all there is. There's Australia, New Zealand and England. We're at war, the three of us. And I'm going to be telling you that Kris Faafoi's law to put us under the governance of the United Nations forever, and all your descendants, you will have lost everything. It is so close to being passed. It's past the second reading, and I'm just going to make many videos about this, but I'm going to make this one now because I'm driving and it's on my mind, and I feel I have to speak about it now. Hope everybody can hear. If anybody can't hear, if it's too loud because I'm driving, I'm not supposed to speak. Now, as everybody knows, the 1990 New Zealand Bill of Wrongs, that's how we identify the New Zealand Bill of Wrongs, Section 19. That is the beast. They're talking about the beast. That is the beast. For all of our Australia and England, it's in the 1990 New Zealand Bill of Wrongs. In Australia, you've got the 2017 Bill of Wrongs, and I'm betting that they're rushing it through. So whatever it is that you're doing, I'm telling you, all your common law crappy courts, all your crappy tribal crap that you're doing, everything that you're doing, you've got to stop now. Stop what you're doing and go and look at your Bill of Rights Act in Australia of 2017 and the Bill of Rights Act of New Zealand 1990. Section 19, they've slipped in one law that binds New Zealand to the New Zealand Human Rights Act. But when you go to the Human Rights Act and you go to the sections, that then links you to United Nations laws. And I just about had a car then. And when you go to the United Nations laws, that then links you to like a whole web of other laws. And it links you to the Charter of the United Nations. Now, the Charter of the United Nations is a forever document. Now, there are very, very few laws that are written that will say forever. None of our treaties have it. There are only, to my understanding, there are only 3 laws that are forever documents. The first one was the Magna Carta, and the Magna Carta put the Pope and his appointed kings and the barons and the knights in charge of all the slave people forever, and that none of the slaves, they could not buy land, and they had to only live under those rulers, and only those rulers and their families were allowed to vote. Nobody else. Everyone else was a slave. This was in England. For 400 years they fought, and that is a forever document. So all of those kings and barons and popes, they still function under that law. The other forever document was the 1688 Bill of Rights, which decided that the people were the one that were going to have the power, and it forbid foreign governance in any Commonwealth countries or their dominions. That is a forever document. And I tell you, the third forever document is this United Nations Charter of Nations. It's a forever document. Now, Section 19 of the New Zealand Bill of Wrongs is connected to that and hundreds of United Nations refugee laws, not your Protestant laws, refugee laws. And what it does is puts the United Nations in governance of all countries of the world. They're going through New Zealand and they're going through Australia. They're going through our two countries. I don't know about England, but I'm only talking about New Zealand and Australia. We've got to get looking, stop what you're doing, stop prosecuting fucking Dan Andrews. It's not only him, and now Kris faafoi has currently got a bill to be passed in New Zealand Parliament as we speak. I mean, this can happen any day, any minute this law can be passed. Stop what you're doing. Go to the Bills of Parliament and look for the inconsistency of the 1990 New Zealand Bill of Rights, which is not your rights. It's taking your rights away from you. Go and find that bill. It's in its second reading. They have made it so complicated that nobody's going to understand it, but there's a few of you savvy people out there that are going to understand. This bill connects you to like 3 or 4 or 5 different laws for you to understand what Kris faafoi is talking about. But the end law, this is what it says. In regards to Section 19, which we know that it is tied to hundreds and hundreds of refugee protections, in regards to Section 19, the New Zealand government at the executive, judicial and parliament level have no right to overrule or to make any act in regards to Section 19. So basically, United Nations absolute rule has snuck into New Zealand through Section 19, and they are about to pass a law saying that New Zealand cannot pass any laws against Section 19. Right? I don't know if anybody's understanding what I'm saying. As soon as that law passes, you will be under the governance of the United Nations, and because the Charter of Nations is a forever document, forever, you are never going to be able to get out of this. The treaty is not going to save you. Your whakaputanga is not going to save you. This Section 19 and the forbiddance of New Zealand to make any laws in regards to it is being passed through the courts. It's being passed through Parliament. If it is passed by Goritz government and Kris faafoi, it means that the people, the sovereign people, which is us, have assented to it. This is a serious drop what you're doing, all of you. I don't care who you are. Drop what you're doing. Drop your groups. Drop your fucking common law. Drop everything. And get this law stopped. Lawyers in New Zealand, Maori, I don't care what church you belong to, if you let this law pass, it is the end of independent governance of the country of New Zealand. It will take hundreds of years to get out of it. Now, the 1852 Constitution was removed in the middle of the night in one day. It passed 3 readings. This bill has already passed its second reading. Kris faafoi deceptively put the inconsistencies of the New Zealand 1990 Bill of Wrongs. Now, we know that when you see that, you might think to yourself, oh, it's the inconsistencies of Section 4, 5, and 6. Section 4, 5, and 6 says that the government can overrule the government. Well, it was a good section because it says the government can overrule all of these rights. That's what it says. And that meant it gave the government the power to overrule Section 19 United Nations refugee rights. But with Kris Faafoi's bill, he's going to have that right removed from New Zealand. This is very serious. This is the most, drop what you're doing. If you've lost your job, too fucking bad. Forget about it. You're going to lose your country and your kids and your future grandchildren and their children. They're going to lose their right to govern in their own country. Now, why do you think, I'm going to talk a little bit more and then I'm going to go because I'm so upset. Why do you think this is so serious? Well, I forgot what I was going to say. It's so serious because when it's passed, okay, here's why it's so serious. They have shipped around about 2 million refugees and immigrants to New Zealand in the last 10 or 15 years. And then they've got all the Anglo people, they've got all the tribes divided, all fighting each other. They've got all the churches divided. They've got the Maori-Peans, us Maori-Peans, which is the Anglo and the original Maori people, they've got us divided. And some of those immigrants side up with the Anglo people, some of them side up with the Maori, and they all divide themselves amongst the tribes. If this law passes to Parliament, and if there's ever a vote by future generations to get rid of this law, the immigrants will outvote us because we are, if we, the Maori and the Anglo, if we are separated, then we won't hold enough power for the vote because they've brought so many immigrants in. Now, they changed the immigrant law as well. I'm not going to go into details, but I'm just going to quickly tell you about it. Originally, in other countries, immigrants, they wait between 10 and 20 years to get citizenship. And in order to vote, they have to hold citizenship. Other countries take only 100 people per nation per year. But New Zealand has been dishing out citizenships to all the refugees immediately, almost upon arrival, because that's in the United Nations refugee rights. So people are arriving in New Zealand, and in New Zealand less than 10 years, less than 5 years, and gaining citizenship. And they changed the voting law to allow people that are only residents, not citizens of New Zealand, to vote. Now, we are the only country in the entire world that allows residents that are not citizens to vote. And this is why they will outvote you. In the next year, all they've got to do, whenever they want an important vote, all they've got to do is bring in thousands of people and make them residents and let them have the vote, and then they can leave again. So if this law passes by Kris Faafoi, the chances of you ever getting it out are slim to fucking nothing. Forget about the vaccines, forget about the injections, forget about your jobs, forget about everything. You must not let this law pass. You mustn't. All right? Now, in an actual fact, when I saw Section 4, 5 and 6 of the 1990 Bill of Rights, and I was saying to you that the Bill of Rights of 1990 is no good because it can be overridden, I'm going to take back what I said, and I'm going to say it's a good thing that it can be overridden, because the 1990 Bill of Rights is for refugees and foreigners in New Zealand that are not able to stand under the 1688 Bill of Protestant Rights. They're not able to. So they had to make a new bill for them, and they put these clauses in that it can be overridden. And we, in our stupidity, not realizing, are trying to have those clauses overthrown. But if they're overthrown, it means that Kris Faafoi's law, of course, will go through, and United Nations will have complete governance over New Zealand. I went and read these laws. They're very hard to understand. The average New Zealander is not going to understand. But this is what we're fighting for, New Zealand. And Australia, this is in Australia. While you're fighting Dan Andrews, this is going down in Australia too. What's going down in New Zealand, and it doesn't even matter because they actually, in another law, have slipped Australia in there by Kris Faafoi again. Kris Faafoi has slipped Australia into a law that connects up to this 1990 Bill of Rights. They have slipped Australia into an AI law, and then the AI law connects them up to the United Nations laws, and all those United Nations laws connect back up to the New Zealand 1990 Section 19. So Australia, even you don't want to be under this, you're being dragged in. I can't show it all to you right now because it's just too hard to show all of this to you. But this is what's going on. Oh my God. You've got to do in Australia too is go and check any laws where they've connected you up to New Zealand. That's what you've got to do. And now this is where we stand in New Zealand, Maori Peons, all my people. This is what we've got to do. You've got to denounce the treaty. It is the treaty that is signed to the UN. You've got to denounce the treaty and stand under your original treaty. You've got to denounce the 1990 Bill of Rights. You've got to start putting in applications to the court for the removal of the illegal 1990 Bill of Rights, which is not belonging to you. This is what you've got to do. And you've all got to fly our New Zealand flag with the British canton. Put them everywhere. Stop flying the foreign flags. Put the New Zealand flag all over New Zealand. It carries our laws and protections that will prevent the United Nations from governing over us. Please listen. SOS, SOS, New Zealand, Australia, England, you've got to listen to me. Help us now. Right, there.